Hello and welcome to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. I am your host, Devlin Bishop, and I have got another episode lined up for you. I am on my own today here in the studio, so I'm going to talk to you about some things. That's what I do. I talk about things and stuff, and I'm going to reflect on some memories today. Coming up, we have Remembrance Day, and it's a big deal to me. It actually should be a big deal to all of us. I don't think you have to celebrate it, put decorations or fly flags, or even if you don't want to wear a poppy, that's fine. I like to kind of do those things. But I think it's something that we should at least do, like even the 1 minute, 2 minute reflection, where we just take a moment of silence to remember those who have fought for our country and those who continue to fight for our country. I think it's very, very important that we do it. And it should mean something to you, even if, it may not. To me, it means a tremendous amount because my dad fought in World War II. He did 2 terms. And my mother pretty much was brought up during that. She actually escaped from East Germany. She actually went over the fence when she was about 14 years old. And basically, was doing everything she could to survive during the war. Now, my parents weren't the kind to talk about their experiences. They mentioned little things along the way, but I knew it obviously was traumatic, and I respect the fact that they didn't want to talk about it. I would have loved to hear more, but it's not a subject I want to push people that don't want to talk about it. I will be talking about my dad a little bit later in this segment because Remembrance Day kind of became a special tradition for us. But, and I decided I'm going to talk about my mother in another segment coming up today. Not necessarily war-related, but just, equal opportunities. I thought it would be great. We're here in the fall, and I thought it'd be nice to just reminisce about my parents a little. So Remembrance Day is very important to me. Obviously, I had 2 parents that lived through it, and I got reminders. They'd play Vera Lynn albums, and as I said, they did speak of it a little bit, but not a lot. But the fact that they both survived from it is very important to me. And then all the other wars, it's amazing the lives that were lost and the people who survived it even and had to deal with so much coming back. And even the ones that continue to fight today. I have such a respect and appreciation for what they do. And some of them are just, it's a job. It's the path we chose, but it is so much more than that. So as I said, I will be wearing my poppy proudly. I have a couple of little things that I put out during Remembrance Day, but if you don't do that, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you you have to go, oh, you can't be, some people are so, why aren't you wearing a poppy? That's your choice. But I think you need to take that reflection. I think you have to be grateful for the freedom that we have that they fought for and continue fighting for. We might not always agree why we send people to war, but when they're over there, there's not much we can do. You can't just be like, well, I don't agree with it, so I'm not going to think of them. That's ridiculous, because they're still fighting for their lives, and they're doing their job to protect this country. And so I think Remembrance Day, I'm glad that they still kind of do it in school. I'm glad that they still promote it everywhere, because it was really an important occasion. I remember as a kid, I never really grasped it. Even though I knew my father was in the war, I knew it was something bad, and I knew sometimes, he'd get a little emotional watching like old war movies, but it never really dawned on me that he kind of went through that until I got older, of course. I remember you'd go to the assembly and you'd just be like, oh, this is so boring and stuff. And then it wasn't until I got a little older that I started really watching the movies they would show, or if they had a speaker in. And I'd slowly start getting it that, yeah, this is something we should be remembering, you know, and not just looking at the clock saying, oh, are we going to go home early? Are we going to go home early? I think kids do have a hard time grasping it. I think kids nowadays are a little more, I don't want to say smarter. I know they say they're smarter, but I have my reservations on that. I think they might be more tech smarter. They might be book smarter. But I think emotionally and stuff, I think they're far, far behind than we were. But I do believe that they probably are aware of war a little bit more, because I think it's in their face more than it was for us. We used to, learn about it in history through books, maybe the film strip or something. But, they see it on the news regularly. And, maybe because, they have a relative or a friend of the family who's off to war, they hear about it, their family talking about it and stuff. So I think they're more up on it, but I don't know at the moment. I think everybody grasps it at different times. But I'm glad it's still there. And maybe when, they're too young, it's good that they don't grasp it all. But when they do grasp it, I think it's important that they realize just how important it is. Now, there's been some debate in recent years whether this should be Remembrance Day, November 11th, should be a national holiday. I personally do not believe it should be. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to soldiers or anyone like that. I just don't. I think there's something poetic and urgent about us just stopping our lives just before 11 o'clock and just taking that minute or 2 minutes or a few minutes to reflect on the soldiers or the people we know that have been in war or have died from war. And then after it's done, we continue back into our lives. And maybe, just maybe, that couple of minutes will make us embrace our lives even more, to realize, wow, we should be happy with what we got, and, happy that we're not drafting kids and forcing them to go over to war, where some countries, that's their life. I just personally think that if we took a whole day off, it would be something we take for granted. We'd just be excited about, yay, tomorrow's a day off, and I don't think it would be an occasion where it would be like Thanksgiving, where we have a family get-together, or we get together with people we love. It could be like that. Some people might do that, but I think most of the time it would just be, people just taking it for granted, probably even forgetting the 11 o'clock thing, putting their feet up, relaxing, catching up on housekeeping, playing video games, hey, I'm going to pay tribute by playing, Call of Duty or something. Which, I guess any way you live your life is a way to pay tribute to it, if that's the way, you pay tribute to it. Look, I'm being a soldier, killing things, I'm not saying that's not a way to remember how hard it was. I think it kind of, for me, it trivializes it a bit, because I do think it glamorizes it, just like, war movies probably glamorize it, even when they're gritty, there's still a little bit of glamour to it. But I just think that it wouldn't be a day of, remembering how awesome it would be. It would just us be, looking at the internet, looking at porn. It would just be, I think we take it for granted. Like, we take everything in the world for granted. And so I personally don't think that we need a holiday for it. I think there's something pretty profound about just stopping. Now, I think it should be mandatory that everybody stops. I hate when I go into like a place and I actually stop and then the whole world is just going around. At least when we were at Target, they actually tried to do that. They actually, made an announcement, and, sometimes it was hard to hear, but I'd always, if I can, I always take my minute And if I'm at a job that I can't take that minute, then I will find time and take a few minutes when I can, because I believe it's my right to do it, and that. But of course, some workplaces aren't like that. But I think it should be mandatory, because I think it's more profound for us to just stop our lives and reflect for a couple minutes, and then resume our lives, and then maybe we embrace our lives even more. Thinking of my dad, as I said, he was an old soldier from World War II, didn't like to talk about his experiences. The only time you'd see him talk about it is maybe if he had a couple of drinks, or if he was with people that did, who went through it as well. But he never went to legions and stuff. My father just wasn't into that. He'd rather go to a regular bar rather than go to the Legion. You know, he liked to watch old war movies and stuff, but it wasn't something he talked about. And I understand that, because, you know, it must have been horrible, some of the stuff that he went through. He was shot, he got shrapnel, and that's what sent him home. I think he had it happen to him twice. So anyhow, I remember every Remembrance Day he used to watch the ceremonies on TV and fight back the tears. And I remember one year I happened to be off on November 11th, and I asked him if I could, maybe we should go downtown together and go to the Hamilton one that they usually do in Gore Park. And much to my surprise, he said that he would like that. And I got to go with him as I fight back my own tears. And I really enjoyed being there with him. You could tell he had a sense of pride. Again, he did not dress up in any of his like old military stuff or wear his medals. He just was there representing. He didn't want to march in it. He didn't want to do anything, but he wanted to be there. And I was happy to be there with him, because he had never been to one of these before. And we went, and I remember after, he actually took me to a bar, which did not happen too often. Me and my dad didn't exactly bar hop a lot. We had gone maybe a couple of times, but he decided he needed to drink, and so we went, and it was nice. We talked a little bit, and he was very happy that I came. Following that, sometimes work wouldn't let me out, or, you know, I didn't things. So I decided that after the minute silence, about 11:05, I knew my dad would be watching it wherever he was. And I knew he'd be at home watching the ceremonies. And I decided I'd start calling him at 11:05 and tell him that I loved him, and that I was thinking about him, and that he was in my heart. And he appreciated it and thanked me for calling and taking the time out. And I remember that my family was never the kind to say the words, "I love you." And, you know, we'd show our love in different ways. And, you know, we didn't even hug. We kissed on the lips. We just did things for each other. We insulted each other. But anyhow, we never did. And I hated that, because later in life, became a really big hugger, and the importance of telling people I love you. So when I started making the calls, I'd always tell him I loved him. And then when I started seeing him, I constantly would say, I love you, before I left. And one day, he finally said, I love you back. And I don't have a big ego about it, but I always tell myself that I taught my father how to say I love you. So, I do that every year. And when he finally passed, Remembrance Day became even more, to me, Because not only do I think of my dad, and my mom a little bit too, because she, had her own life to deal with in the war, but I don't have anyone to call at 11:05 anymore. So after I take the time to think about him and all the people that had fought and are fighting still, it's a little weird that I don't have a phone call to make anymore. But that doesn't stop me from, looking up to the sky and just saying, I love you, Dad. I tend to also, the fall is a real big time for me to go and visit their grave. They were both cremated, but they share a headstone together at, I want to say, Woodland Cemetery. I could be wrong. I know exactly where it is, I just always forget the name of it. Mostly probably because I'm really emotional by the time I cross the place that has the name. I don't think to, memorize it. But I think it's, Woodland Cemetery. It's by the Royal Botanical Gardens. And I know soon I'm going to make a visit there, because fall to me is just a great time. I usually try to go out spring and fall. And, I get to talk to them for a little bit. I'm not one of those people who think it's a bad thing. Some people avoid cemeteries, but I actually find them quite peaceful. And I like to talk to them. And to me, it just seems like a portal to where I get to talk to them. I know I can talk to them at any time, but I don't know. To me, it's almost like a fast track that you can say things that went on in your past year, and the good, the bad, the ugly. So Remembrance Day is coming up, but for me, as I said, my parents were both affected by the war. So Remembrance Day to me is kind of every day I think of my parents. The only difference is I might think of my dad as a soldier more. But he's still my dad. The rest of the year I do think of him as just, that guy that took me to the movies. That, we'd have weird talks or let me stay up to watch Benny Hill. But Remembrance Day, I think of him as the soldier and how he'd be gone for weeks and months on end, when he was still in the military and I was a little kid, and he just would come home, and I'd be waiting for him to come home, and, I guess in some ways, I still am waiting for him. Anyhow, I'm going to take a little break and talk about something lighthearted, some pop culture, because I think if I did my mom segment right now, I'd just be an emotional wreck, even though I am going to be a little lighter for that story. I just felt that equal opportunity. I talked about my dad. Now I want to talk about my mom. But we're going to take a short break, and I'm going to talk about the DC movie and TV universe. And we will do that when I get back. I got to go clean up here. Remembrance Day. Every year like this. Welcome back. You're listening to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. Sorry, got a little emotional there. You guys who regular listeners know that happens quite a bit. Not saying that all I do is blubber on this show. I've had some really good laughs on this show as well, so. Anyhow, right now I would like to talk about something a little lighthearted. And that is the DC movie and TV universe. I am a DC boy all the way. I don't know if it's just my age or something. Now, that's not saying I'm not a Marvel fan. I read my share of Marvel comics when I was younger, and I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it's phenomenal. And I love the TV show Daredevil. I think they've done spectacular things with it. But I was always brought up a DC boy, and I'm proud of that. I really am. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, you name it. I loved it. I like all the cheesy versions that came out. I've talked about my love for Batman 66. I like all the darker versions too. I used to be a huge Batman fan, but in recent years, I would say since, maybe not recent, maybe 10, 15 years, I've become a Superman fan. One of the reasons is because, first of all, I just love the character. But after I watched Smallville and I grew up with the Christopher Reeves movies, I realize he's probably one of the most misunderstood superheroes. And as I see the newer generations coming up telling me how much they don't like Superman because he's too indestructible, I actually kind of respect him even more, that people are kind of turning their backs on him. Because that's exactly what the comic says that will happen to him. And so I've become a big Superman fan because of that. Not saying I don't like the other ones just as much. My love for Aquaman could be, rivaled. I will certainly talk of a segment with my love of Aquaman. I also grew up with the cheesy Super Friends, besides reading the comics. I loved Super Friends. I don't care how goofy it was. It still entertains me today. I love putting one on. I think they're just a lot of fun. And the Justice League they did in the 2000s, I believe it was the 2000s, maybe the 90s, but they did such a phenomenal job with it. I recommend anybody checking it out. I never understood why they didn't get these guys who did this show to write some of the movies and stuff. Because some of the stories were like, awesome. You're on the edge of your seat, and there was some comedy in it and lightheartedness. Now, they're now starting to try and branch out the DC universe. DC has always had some successes, the Batman movies, Superman movies, and now they're trying to branch out in a universe where kind of everything comes together, like Marvel. Now, they've only got one movie under their belt right now, Man of Steel. And, Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice is going to be a couple of months away. And everybody's excited about it. I certainly am. Can't wait to see what they do with it. I have to say, I'm not the biggest fan of Man of Steel. I've watched it like 4 times, and I'm slowly not hating it. Not that I ever hated it. I think Henry Cavill as Superman is amazing. Christopher Reeves will always be my Superman. He was the one I brought up with. He was the first superhero movie to hit the big screen where it was just, taken a little more serious. And, he'll always be my Superman. But Henry Cavill is really good. He fits the costume. He looks like Superman. I just love him. I think he's great. I just think the movie Man of Steel had so much problems with it. I know they took a darker tone. They wanted it more to fit like Chris Nolan. And as much as I love his Batman trilogy, I'd like to thank Chris Nolan for having to turn everything dark now. And I'm being sarcastic when I say that, just because I think some superhero movies shouldn't be dark. But they seem to always try to hit that tone now. I'm glad Marvel doesn't follow that. I think Marvel has a nice mix of comedy and, adventure and seriousness. But they've already said the DC universe is going to be set in a very serious tone. In fact, there was a memo going around saying, no jokes. And there wasn't many laughs in Man of Steel for sure. And there's so much. I'm not going to sit here ragging on Man of Steel, but I don't think it was a strong property to start the movie universe. But the good news is they've got lots of room for progress. As I said, I'm looking forward to Batman versus Superman. I think Ben Affleck's going to do a great job. I've always been a fan of his. And I think he'll fill out the Batman suit, not only, physically, but emotionally, too. I'm looking forward to most of the stuff in the DC movie universe. I'm not sure. I'm going into it trying to be positive, but it seems like every news story they tell me I'm not certain of. I love that they actually have okayed an Aquaman movie. That'd be awesome. Now, of course, that means they have to succeed on all their other ones. I think Batman vs. Superman will be a hit no matter what, because you've got two icons that have never shared the screen that are going to be on screen, so I can't see that failing. Then Suicide Squad's going to hit, and I think there's so much buzz around this, and because our generation, like the world we live in now, cherishes criminals over heroes, I really think that movie probably will do well. And then after that, you got your Justice League movies, and then your standalones like Wonder Woman and stuff. That they, to get to my Aquaman movie, those movies have to be hits. And I don't want to be negative, but I'm still a little nervous about it. I don't know if they can pull it off. I think the whole dark tone, I think you can do dark, but I think you need a little levity into it. Because if I'm going to go to 2.5 hours of just like, dark, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Especially in a bunch of characters that I grew up that were so full of light, and life. And maybe I'm just getting older. Maybe I'm just getting older and I'm just not with it anymore, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I am excited to say that I do like what DC's done with their TV universe. The Arrow, the Flash. I've not seen Supergirl yet, but I think that the Arrow and the Flash are fantastic. Now, I don't agree with every storyline they've done, but I think they do a great job with the writing, with the casting, everything about it. It saddened me when they actually said that there's going to be a Flash movie, but they're actually going to cast a different Flash, that their TV universe and movie universe is going to be separate. Because I honestly think their TV series are strong enough to be connected. Apparently, they don't think so. Which is so too bad, because the Arrow came in, and I remember I was a little skeptical about the Arrow when it first started, because the Arrow was played by a guy named Justin Hartley on Smallville. And when Smallville got canceled, a lot of people thought they would just spin Justin Hartley off into his own show. And I was all for that, because I thought he did an amazing job as the Arrow. But they didn't. They wanted to revamp it and start fresh, and so they got Stephen Amell in. And I remember I watched the first episode, and I liked it, but I wasn't certain I'd be sold on it. But after I watched a few episodes, I really got into it. And I thought Stephen Amell was absolutely amazing. I don't think I don't want to be mean, I don't think he's the greatest actor, but I think you've actually seen him grow into the character, which has made him one of the greatest Arrows I have ever seen. I think he's really made the character his own. I think he's an amazing person. I follow him on Facebook, and just the stuff he does on social media, how he uses social media is phenomenal. He doesn't have someone run his own Facebook page. He literally does it himself. He's actually been commended by what he has done with social media, because he actually talks to the fans. He does little Q&As where he'll go live and you can talk to him, and he's got the cam on him and stuff. He's done charity work. He's come up with promotions to help people. And he's been commended for the fact that he uses it. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have people that set up his charities and stuff like that, of course. He's a busy man. He's not only got to film that show, but he also has to stay in that incredible shape, because I never ever thought of the Arrow as somebody who had to be immensely in shape. But if you ever seen Stephen Amell's workouts, he's a beast. And it works on the show. It really does. I like the Arrow. They've done some storylines that are a little controversial. But overall, I love their take on it. I used to really like the flashback stuff, but as we go into the next season, I'm almost I'm kind of want the future stuff to happen. the flashback stuff to me is just getting a little old hat. But you know what? It's still amazing, and I love how the writers always kind of use it to what's going on in Oliver's real life. I think the Arrow's amazing, and I don't see why Stephen couldn't stand next to Henry and Ben. I think he would just fit fine in the universe. And so I think the Arrow's wonderful. If you've never seen it, you should check it out. It's just really well done. And if you love Stephen Amell as much as I do, definitely follow him on Facebook, because it's incredible the stuff he does and the stuff he shares. And he's no nonsense, too. If fans basically, burn him for something, he will call them out. He'll just say, enough. Don't be on my side. I don't want you here. I don't want negativity. I don't want that kind of stuff. And it's great because he's running it himself. He doesn't have time to, if he says something and people, misconstrue it, he's just filmed, all day and all night and comes back to this. He's just like, no, I'll have none of it. But The Arrow's a fantastic show. I highly recommend it. And the spin-off series, The Flash, also an incredible show. And I have never been the biggest Flash fan. He's slowly growing on me. He only showed up periodically in the original Super Friends. He had an old TV show with John Wesley Shipp, I believe his name is. I always said Wesley Snipes, but that would have been really bad. John Wesley Shipp, who actually plays Flash's dad in the new series, which wasn't all that great. I've seen a couple episodes. I own the series, but it's not a great show. It does what it has to do. And then Justice League came, that animated series I was just talking about, and the Flash was just kind of this goofy kid that made quips, and almost like Marvel's Spider-Man. As in, I'm not trying to say, Flash is better than Spider-Man. I'm just saying that they almost had that same quality. Quirky one-liners and stuff like that. And I kind of fell for the Flash in that. And so when they did a TV version, I thought, how are they going to get so many episodes on running? Like Speed. And guess what? They have successfully done it. I watched season 1 of The Flash. I absolutely adored it. In fact, I think I might have even enjoyed it just a touch more than The Arrow. It's very hard, because one moment I'm loving The Arrow, then I'm loving The Flash. It's hard. I really shouldn't put them higher, but if I had to, I would say so. The actor they casted for him, I wasn't sold on him at first. Grant Gustin. Cute guy and everything. But I just didn't, I don't know, I thought he was a little too skinny, a little too wiry. Then I actually saw the episodes and I saw him in the suit and I said, you know what, it makes sense that he's kind of wiry and tall and, they didn't make him too quippy, which I like. They kind of built that, like he just started getting a little bit like that, and I like that he wasn't just like this, really obnoxious, funny guy right from the start. Like they kind of built it, like he's got it in him, but he's got to get his confidence. And as he becomes the Flash, he gets more and more confidence. And I love that. I love that they just took their time developing this character. So now I'm absolutely, as I said, I love the stories they do. Come on, they took on Gorilla Grodd, which is a laughable character. He's a giant gorilla. And I thought, oh no, I said they're going to try that. But everything they've tried at has been, for the most part, a success. And it's fun to see the characters come to life. Arrow takes on, his own. They kind of mix up the villains from the DC universe, and they bring on, some of Batman's have been on Arrow, and, Flash has taken on some other people's stuff. It's just a great show. I can't wait to see what they do with season 2. There's also a mini-series coming that's going to feature a whole bunch, almost like a mini Justice League, but none of the big names, but like Firestorm and Arsenal and maybe a couple of others. And, it's they've done such a good job. And again, I think Grant Gustin would be fine standing next to all the others in the movie universe. But I guess because Arrow and the Flash have a lighter tone, I'm not saying they actually do have some dark moments in there. I think the Arrow more than the Flash. But I like that, again, they took the high road. Stephen Amell said he would have loved to have been in the movies, but he says, you know what, we're creating our own universe, we're happy with it, and that's fine. And I love that he stuck up for Grant Gustin, because apparently when The Flash debuted, they did great ratings. Like incredible ratings. And then the second week, which is always the one you check, because a lot of shows do really good, and then the next week they fall off. Anyhow, by the second week, The Flash didn't lose all that many ratings. In fact, it was considered like, that's awesome. That means most people that watched it the first week came back for the second. And it was on that day that DC announced that they had cast a Flash for their movie universe. And Stephen Amell, Grant Gustin was like, didn't say anything, and he was just like, I'm happy to be on my TV show. And it was Stephen Amell that came to his defense and basically said, I think that was a shitty move that Warner Brothers did. They have every right to keep their movie and TV universes separate, but they could have picked a better day. This was Grant Gustin's day that his Flash was holding up in the ratings and was going to be a success for Warner Brothers. And they choose that same day to reveal that they've got a new Flash for their universe. And I love that. Shows you just how much of a superhero Stephen Amell is. And he's Canadian too. Had to point that out. And he stood right up for him and said that was a bullshit move. And I agree. Now, I'm going to go into the DC movie universe open-minded. I am really looking forward to Batman vs. Superman. And I really hope Zack Snyder, who seems to be the front runner of kind of keeping the universe together, who I am really hit and miss with, I really hope he can make this happen, because I think DC deserves a movie universe. I don't like, personally, the way they're going about doing it, but you know what? I wish them all the best, and I hope that I get hit movies so I can get to my Aquaman movie, because I think the world is ready for it. And they weren't ready for an Aquaman TV show because they tried a pilot and it failed. If you want to check it out, you can see it. I think you can catch it on YouTube or some of the streaming places. But anyhow, I'm always going to be a DC boy. And I look forward to seeing what they bring. And I'm going to probably check out Supergirl. I wasn't too fond of the trailers. It kind of more looked like a quirky romantic comedy more than a superhero movie. But I heard the ratings are really good, but I haven't heard the rumblings of what people are saying. But I've always been the kind to judge it on my own anyhow. So I hope they keep building the DC TV universe, because by the time the movies start coming out, they're going to have a pretty solid universe. And if the movies get a little too dark, at least we have the TV shows to fall back on. Anyhow, I've rambled enough about the Super Friends and DC, and when we come back, I'm going to talk some funny, I hope, and sentimental stories about my mom. I did my dad some, so it's her turn now. And we'll do that right after this. Welcome back. I am here with you, Devlin Bishop, hopefully entertaining you with my musings. Thank you for taking the time. I haven't thanked you in the last 10 minutes. I like to make sure everybody's thoroughly thanked, because I do appreciate anybody who takes their time out to listen to this. So I talked about my dad in an earlier segment of this episode, so I decide my mom deserves some too. I loved my mom dearly. I recently said in a recently on a recent post on Facebook, I recently said that I think if my mom were alive today, no matter how many accomplishments I have had in my entertainment and my comedic career, she would be most proud of the fact that I work at a second-hand store. Now, when I said this, I meant it with the utmost of love, and people misconstrued it. What a surprise. Something that was said on Facebook was taken the wrong way. I got people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't put down your career. You've had an amazing career," And then other people were like, second-hand stores, I use them all the time. You shouldn't be offended that you work at second-hand stores. I never meant either of them. And first of all, I am so proud of the career I've had. And, well, the career I still have, I make it sound like it's past tense. As much as I joke about retiring, I'd like to think I'm still in the entertainment business, even if it's just this podcast for now. But I'm so proud of all the great shows that I've produced. The Devlin show, the Devlin monologues, Devlin's improv party, all of them, everything I've done. And I'm certainly not putting down second-hand stores. Maybe when I was younger, I was not a fan of them. But now I have no problem with them. I love going in. I love saving money. I love finding stuff that is rare. It's a great feeling. But what I meant that if anybody knew my mother, she absolutely loved second-hand stores. And if I came to her when she was alive and said, "Mom, I got a job working at Value Village, second-hand store," she would just be thrilled. She would basically be there probably almost every day, due to the fact that I get a discount on stuff, and I think she would abuse it, and I'd want her to, because she really did enjoy the hunt. I think for her, as I said, she escaped East Germany. We're talking back in the 40s when she was probably 14. I think that's the year she said she did. And she actually, jumped the fences where she could have been shot by soldiers, because there was a reason they kept East and West separate at that time. So they wanted it separated at that time. So basically, she risked her life. So she came from a farm life that they didn't have much. And I think that's one of the things she loved, was finding stuff at good prices. So she never, ever was afraid to go to second-hand stores. But I want to go earlier into her career as well, because when we first came to Canada, one of her favorite things to do, and I used to be embarrassed telling people this, but since I've mentioned it in one of my monologue shows, I might as well mention it to the whole internet world and the 17 people that enjoy my show. My mother used to like to garbage pick. I'm not proud to say that, but she turned us into a bunch of garbage pickers. My dad would be off on military leave. He'd go on they'd send him to different places, and we wouldn't see him for weeks or so on end. And when he was there, he'd be part of it, because he knew my mother liked this, and that's how we got a lot of the stuff in our house. I'm not saying everything in our house was picked out of the garbage, but she loved, when my dad was home, she loved to drive to, fancier neighborhoods. And she wasn't afraid, the night before garbage day, we would go and, oh, look, there's a lamp we could use. Look, there's a chair. And we would literally, run out into the darkness and take stuff. I feel like I'm in a confessional right now, but I'm smiling also because it's a wonderful memory now that I can't believe we did this. We were not known in the Hamilton area for this. This happened mostly in Kingston and Pembroke, where I was brought up. But anyhow, my mother loved it. And even as a kid, I knew it was wrong. And she'd get my brothers out there. Paul and Ernie would be out there, grabbing stuff too. As many hands as possible. And even as a kid, I knew it was wrong. And I would just sit in the car and couldn't believe this was happening. Or sometimes when we didn't have a car, when my dad wasn't home, we'd literally walk a few blocks to get to these places. And There's my brothers carrying a bloody desk or something. I don't know. I was too young to remember all that. But anyhow, I remember one time I saw a scooter, and I really wanted this scooter. It was just one of those metal ones that you use your foot to kick. It's not like motorized or anything. It was like a little traditional scooter. And I remember I loved it. It was red with like a white part where you put your feet. And it had a little bit of rust, but it was in pretty good condition. And the wheels were strong, the whole works. And I remember being in the car thinking, I really want that scooter. But I also know this is morally wrong. Well, what became even more morally wrong is my mother decided this would be my initiation into the family. If I wanted the scooter, I had to go get it. I really wanted the scooter, so I decided, okay, this is me doing it. My family's been doing this. None of them have been arrested. I'm going to do it. So I get out of the car, and they're all watching me as I head towards the scooter. And I remember as I touched the handlebars of the scooter, I believe it was either my mother, it could have been my brothers, but all I know is I started hearing from the car, "Oh my God, here come the cops! Here come the cops!" And I just grabbed that scooter and ran back to the car as fast as ever. They were all laughing at me when I came, but they were also proud of me because I actually didn't just run to the car. I actually had the scooter with me. So I feel I won my initiation into my family of garbage pickers. Eventually, my mother found out that they actually have second-hand stores, and even though it's not as free, it got a little harder to garbage pick, so she started going to second-hand stores. She'd go to regular stores too, but, back to school would come, and, I think we used to get maybe one or two good pieces, and then she'd buy everything else secondhand, which, when I was a kid, it bothered me a little bit, but not really. I was always afraid that somebody that was at my school donated it, and then they would recognize the shirt, and there might be some mark on it that they knew, and then they would call me out, and everybody would know that my family shopped at secondhand shops. I remember my mother used to try to take me to the Amity, and, they'd have their bag sale, for those of you who are familiar with it. And you'd just stuff a bag. It would cost a certain amount for a bag, and you'd just fill the bag, and that would be it. And I hated those because I was always afraid I'd bump into kids at school, and my mother would always say, "Well, why would they be making fun of you if they're in there?" And I said, well, that sounds logical, but as a kid, nothing is really logical. So anyhow, I'd go to the secondhand shops, and, I'd bear with it. I was lucky. My brothers were older than me, so I didn't get hand-me-downs. Normally kids get, hand-me-downs, but because they were literally 7 or 8 years older than me, I was literally in a wrong generation. Their clothes were all out of date by the time they would have got down to me. Not to mention, my mother wouldn't have kept them around for that long. She'd donate them to secondhand stores. So anyhow, I remember one time that I was getting to the point where I was a teenager, and I really didn't want secondhand clothes. I really wanted to finally have the best of the best, and she would always say, look, we can't afford that. My father, had a job. He was working hard for everybody. He worked at Royal Insurance. He was in the mailroom. And my mom had a part-time job doing some housekeeping and stuff. But we didn't live high on the hog. And all the money they had, they pretty much spent on us. I didn't know that till I was a lot older, but they sacrificed a lot for us, and I appreciate what they did. I kind of wish they didn't. I was spoiled as a kid, and when I look back at it, I'm happy that they spoiled me, but I also wish that they maybe, saved a little bit so they could have took trips or something, but they never did, but that's another story altogether. Anyhow, I remember I just wanted to finally have some clothes that were popular. And I remember she said, no, like, we have to save money. There's nothing wrong with secondhand clothes. Like, it wasn't just we didn't have the money. She really felt that I was just being a little bit of an ego monster, and I guess I was. So one day I was so excited. When I was growing up in the 80s, Adidas was the big thing for us, you know. So to get anything Adidas was a good thing. And I remember I was so excited because of the fact that she found in the secondhand store these Adidas rugby pants. I remember they were beautiful. They were black and shiny, and they had 2 white stripes down the side. When I look at them now, I'm thinking, why did I even want them? But I was a different kid, and I knew they were popular, and everybody had them, and boy, was I going to finally look good. A little husky kid putting on his Adidas pants. And I remember going to school, and I remember that I felt really confident. I was really proud and stuff, and basically I wore them with pride. And then I noticed people would be looking at them and staring at them, and I thought, is this what it's like to have really awesome clothes that people just look at? Are they checking out my ass? And then somebody told me, do you realize you're wearing Adios pants? I said, what? They're Adidas. Well, I was so happy to get them. I didn't really look at them closely because they were some knockoff brand called Adios or something. It was like 1 letter off, and I was livid. I got home and I remember ripping the pants off, and I basically said to my mom, that's it, no more secondhand stuff. I want new. And my mother looked at me and said, no, we can get you a few new things like we do all the time, but you're going to wear secondhand clothes. It's good enough for you, and there's nothing wrong with them. I don't buy crappy clothes. They're always in good condition, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with wearing secondhand clothes. And I was mad. Come on. I was teen angst, you know, going through my pubescent years, so obviously I had anxieties, I have angst. What's changed? No, I mean, it was more intense, obviously. And when you're a teen, everything's the end of the world. But, you know, I look back at that time and I realized she was 100% right. As I got older, like not even much older, I actually liked going to second-hand stores to buy DVDs. Well, back then it would have been more vinyl and VHS tapes, and I liked finding little toys, and eventually I started finding clothes. You know, I'd find just an awesome jacket that I absolutely adored. You know, I remember finding this, it was like an old jazz, I felt like an old jazz musician would wear it. It was like a I can't even say it, PT jacket or PE. I don't know. Maybe that's why I don't wear fashionable clothes, because I can't even pronounce them. But anyhow, it was like a petticoat or something. I don't know what to say, but I loved it, and I remember buying it, and then I'd start buying other stuff at secondhand stores. And I remember thinking my mother would be very happy that this is something I got off her. Because I think my brothers, I don't think they're big second-hand store shoppers, but I did. I took that from her, and, you know, saving money. But not only saving money, I love the hunt of things. I like finding things. Used to love looking for vinyl, and then it was like, oh my God, this is like the Holy Grail. I've been looking for this for years. And when you'd find it, it would feel so great when you finally did. Or if you just find a nice piece of clothes, you know. And I think she'd be really proud. So when I said I got a job at a second-hand store, I meant she would be through the moon. And although she would be so proud of the entertainer I became, because her love of second-hand clothes, and because it would be me finally saying, hey, I'm okay with it, I think that would have sent her over the moon even more than me being this entertainer that I've become, this local celebrity in Hamilton. So I'm happy to be there. I really like my job there. I don't want to talk about Value Village too much because, I'm old-fashioned. I talk about it too nicely, and they'll lay me off, or if I don't want to be one of those, I hate it, which is not true. It's like any job. There's some great stuff about it. There's some not so great stuff about it. But I've never been the one to kind of push it. Even when Target closed, you probably remember I talked about, only the positive things. But anyhow, I still like looking. I get a great discount at the secondhand store, but I also, I like to go to antique stores too. And antique stores are basically just classier versions of secondhand stores. And, I found so many wonderful things. That's where I found my drive-in speaker. That was something I've wanted for so long. And if I didn't go to these stores, I would never have found that. And so, as much as I love shopping new, I love supporting little local shops, like a secondhand store or something like that. And I love knowing that my mom is kind of there with me. I can just feel her smiling, look at my son going through this stuff, trying to find a treasure, a bargain, anything. And I hope she understands that I may not have said it with words, but I really appreciate the stuff she did for me, including getting me those Adios rugby pants that may have given me some humiliation. I continued to wear them because I actually found them very comfortable. And I didn't care if kids laughed at me or whatever. I did care at the time, and probably would still care, but you know what I mean. I just got to the point if they didn't mock me for that, they'd find something to mock me because they're just people that would mock you. That's what they did. So, I kind of wish I got to tell her, but I am a believer that they can see me still. Hopefully only at times that I want them to see me, because maybe they shouldn't see everything that happens in my life. That's a whole other segment. But anyhow, I hope she is with me when I do my shopping on Ottawa Street or any of the secondhand stores I go to, or even when I'm walking around Value Village on my breaks and looking around. I hope she's with me and smiling, knowing that she gave this to me. She gave me that value of $1, that I could find something for a good price, or I could find something that I've always wanted or desired, and there it is. I don't have to just buy things new all the time. Anyhow, thank you for letting me get a little nostalgic and a little teary-eyed. I tend to get this way for the fall. We're now into the home stretch towards Christmas. Yes, I said the word. I will definitely be doing some Christmas shows very soon. I also have a couple more guests I'm hoping to have on before the end of the year. Thank you again for taking this time for me and letting me share stories of my past. Please write me. Tell me stuff you want. If you want to criticize me, that's cool. If you want to, tell me you enjoy my stories, or maybe share one of your own, I'd love that too. Anyhow, I will talk to you again very soon.